All right, guys, welcome back. Episode 2 of the Dream Builders podcast. So we're going to dive a little bit deeper in the way that I think that, like Sapphire does things. So one thing that I want to touch on is the architect's perspective. And what I mean by that is like in your traditional, I guess, say interaction with the builder, right? People are either meeting with an architect separately, getting blueprints, bringing them this and the other. It's almost like a separate entity. And sometimes there's probably animosity and butting of heads and whatnot. But you kind of absorb this as part of, I think, that all encompassing experience. And you're an architect, right? So I want you to talk about your vision again and like Sapphire and whatnot, but like from the architect's perspective.
Yeah, great point. So, a lot of the traditional route, if you will, when you're building a luxury custom home is you hire a salesperson to help you find, a real estate agent to help you find a piece of property. You hire an architect to do your architectural drawings, an engineer to do your civil work, a landscape architect to do your landscape design. Then you hire a general contractor builder. Then you hire a landscape company. Yep. And there's a lot of, and an interior designer.
Yep.
Right. There's a lot of different pieces to this puzzle. And oftentimes you as the homeowner don't want to deal with all of these things, right? You're coordinating and hiring and paying all these different people. And that's kind of I guess one of the opportunities that I saw in the custom luxury home building space is if you can get it to be more streamlined, where everybody is on the same team, because like you said, a lot of times, and I've done it before where I was just a builder and there was an interior designer and an architect and whatnot, a landscaper, and it is challenging because everybody has a different way of doing things, or they're not getting the information that they need, or we're waiting on the design, the designer's waiting on the client, and the architect hasn't updated the plans to reflect what the designer wants to change or whatever it may be. So it gets convoluted, it really does, and it becomes very challenging, and there's a lot of mistakes that happen, timelines get blown, and this is how budgets get blown. This is a big concern for a lot of our clients when building a home, is like, I don't want this project to take 3, 4, 5 years, and I don't want it to double and triple in price, because we've heard horror stories. My friend built and they started at X and it was X times 3 by the time they were finished, and that's a real thing that happens. My background in architectural design, and that's really my forte, and that's the part of the process that I love the most. I can coordinate all of those things from within, right? So at Sapphire, all of these things happen under one roof. All the different phases of design and construction all happen, and even the land acquisition. A lot of times people think, oh, I found this 1 acre piece of property, I'm going to buy this, I'm going to build my dream home. Well, they don't do the proper due diligence that's necessary to build a home, whether that's checking the ground conditions, soil borings, or are there any easements, any HOA restrictions. A lot of times there's a lot of restrictions that aren't visible just by looking at a piece of property. You have to do a lot of homework. There are wetlands on the property, setback requirements, et cetera, et cetera. So HOA, sometimes they limit what kind of materials you can use for a driveway or for a roof or for whatever it may be. Gutters even, like, you'd be surprised at some of the limitations. So knowing all that and hiring the right team that anticipates these things, we're going to do all that due diligence and all that homework and coordinate all of those things for you. So I think it's super important, whether you hire Sapphire or anybody else, that the team is selected initially and early, before designs are created, before a lot is necessarily purchased. At least identify who you want to use, interview those people, bring them all together in a room and say, this is my dream team, if you will, and make sure that everybody's aligned with your vision, budget. You don't know how many times clients have come to me with a set of plans that they have designed by whomever and said, we just spent $100,000 designing this home, and we told the architect our budget was whatever it was, $5 million, and we're getting this bid out by other GCs and we're getting bids for 7 and 8, and that's way over our budget. And that's another big part of this. An architect, are there amazing architects out there? Absolutely. There's some really great architects in our market, top of the line guys that can design super cool homes. But ultimately, feasibility is a big part of it, right?
Yeah.
I can design the coolest home in the world, but if you can't afford to build it, what's the point? At Sapphire, we don't really make our business model isn't around selling blueprints. We don't even charge for them most of the time. It's incorporated in part of the home.
Yeah.
Our goal is to design a home that's feasible for you and your family, whether it's the style or the layout and of course the budget. So us being a design build company, I think that's what is really important. And plus we're fixed price, meaning that's a big differentiator. If we could talk about that for a second too.
Yes, sure.
Most custom home builders are cost plus, meaning you have the components that make up the house, foundation, framing, windows, doors, roof, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. They budget all those things out, and then they add a percentage on top of that, 15, 20, 25%, whatever it may be. And that's how the builder is paid. Now, a lot of clients think that's better because it's a very transparent process. The builder is showing me every invoice, and I'm just paying a markup that I'm comfortable. Well, let's think about that for a second.
Yeah. There's pros and cons, right?
Yeah. What's the incentive for the builder to get a great price for you on any contract, whether it's electrical or framing or whatever? In fact, they're hurting themselves by getting you a better contract or a better price, right? Because they're making percentage on top of it. So oftentimes they're looking for a better quality guy or a better timeline guy, somebody that they have a great relationship, but isn't necessarily the cheapest. So
Yeah.
there's that component. And then oftentimes when the client is in control of that checkbook, if you will, because they think it's transparent, they tend to spend more money because they feel like, oh, I know this is 10 grand plus my markup, 20% is 12 grand. I'm okay with it. And then those little things start to add up.
Yeah.
And that's how a lot of times these projects just balloon out of proportion, whether it's design wise or selections or whatever it may be, landscaping oftentimes. So with us, we're fixed price. We tell you, we'll design a home and say this home with these features and this landscape on this home is X amount of dollars, 3 million, 5 million, 8 million, whatever it may be.
Yeah.
And unless you make changes, then that's the price.
Right.
And you know that very early in the process, right? We like to guide our clients that way. So kind of coming back to your question here.
Yeah.
Having the architect as also the builder has so many advantages in the sense of designing something that we know can be built, not only from a feasibility perspective from a construction standpoint, but also from a budgetary perspective, right?
Yeah.
I don't want to design a $10 million home if your budget's $5 million, because you're not going to build it, and then what's the point?
Right. Yeah.
You're not happy. I didn't get a build job out of it. It's not a great situation.
Not a win-win.
No.
I think, I think a lot of people, it's probably very clear that there's going to be advantages of, having it in one place, right? And the biggest one probably is that budget, because when you've got that bird's eye view, right, you tend to know, like, okay, this is typically where clients tend to spend more or less, and you can kind of guide them through those decisions. I've sat in on meetings where, you got a really good feel for what was really important to a client, what was a nice to have, and you kind of guided them to help them, get what you want, versus one, it's very sequential, right? Once it's off the architect's desk, it's almost like, hey, that's your problem now. But I imagine, as well as pros, there's going to be some challenges internally about, bringing some of that stuff in-house. So, are there, and I guess, what does that look like, and how do you go about those things?
Ultimately, all those things have to happen, right? There has to be blueprints have to be made, a site plan has to be created, design has to be, done, and selections have to be made. Somebody somewhere is doing that, right? And if the homeowner is, piecing that all together, they're paying individual fees to all of those people. Whereas at Sapphire, that's all just part of that fixed price. We're not billing out for architecture services, interior design services, whatnot.
Yeah.
So the challenge from my perspective is I have a much larger staff than most general contractors. We have an entire design department. We have myself plus 2 additional architects on staff. We have a landscape designer, 4 interior designers, a furniture specialist, design specialist. So we have a relatively large design department.
Yeah.
That's within the company. So, it's staffing those positions, making sure we have the right people that share the vision and the excitement for the homes, and making sure everybody's aligned and representing the company well. And overall, I'm super happy with our team. We have a great team. Many of them have been with me for many years now, and we all are, marching to the same tune, if you will.
Yep.
But really, that's from a business owner's perspective, I'd say that's the biggest challenge. On the flip side, though, I retain ultimate control over this process, which helps me deliver the best product to the client, the best home, from an efficiency perspective, whether that's timeline or cost, from a quality perspective, because we're really big on designing things up front and early in the process.
Yeah.
We don't want to be building this home without decisions made, because ultimately then we're going to have to take, 1 step forward, 2 steps back type situation, which costs time and money.
Yep.
Clients sometimes give me some pushback, like, why do I have to pick out my appliances when we haven't even dug the hole yet? Or why do I have to pick my paint color or whatever? Well, they don't, rightfully so, they don't know the whole process or the experience, but everything is tied to everything else. A fridge isn't a fridge. You're not buying a fridge off the shelf that's, from Home Depot, for example. When you're building a home of this level, I should say, there's 48-inch fridges, 60-inch fridges, 72-inch fridges. Do you want the columns together or separated? You want panelized or stainless steel panels? There's so many. Then that's just the fridge, the range, the dishwasher. There's so many questions around that, and each one has intricate components that make that up, right? The size of the opening, obviously, for that space, but water lines, gas lines, electrical, they all have to be in very specific places for a Sub-Zero fridge. I'm just using that as an example.
Sure.
The cabinetry, the countertops, everything is correlated to everything else. So you can't make design decisions kind of like solely, right? It's a very holistic approach. So if I'm constructing a home, I need to have all my decisions. Can you build a car without knowing the specs that you're going to be building? No, it doesn't make sense. At one point, you're stopping the assembly line.
Right. Yeah. You can't decide what kind of engine you want later.
Right.
And
that's the right way to build a home, to make all your decisions up front. Do changes happen here and there, whether it's because of a discontinued product or the client saw something? Yeah, sure. Changes happen, and that's okay within reason. But it's not, we can't move on with construction because we don't have this decision, right?
Right.
And things these days have really just gotten more and more complex. A light fixture isn't just a light fixture anymore. With integrated LED and low voltage, sometimes you don't even have high voltage wiring. So if you just run a wire, 110 wire to this fixture, like a typical scenario, but then you buy a light fixture that requires low voltage, now you're kind of
you need to transform, whatever. It's
and people don't necessarily know these things, right? We've learned these things from experience, and obviously we're well in tune with the industry and the changes within it. But the things that you would think, like, why do I need to make this decision right now, really implicate a lot of the other decisions and the whole construction path.
Yeah. And I'm glad you brought that up, because I was going to ask you about it. I think it's safe to say that, you try to front load a lot of those decisions, and for the reasons you just said, but also I think that maybe clients tend to enjoy the rest of the process when they're not worried about constantly being bombarded but that could be a challenge in and of itself, right? Like that's depending on the I guess the how involved somebody wants to be. Um, it could be a lot of decisions that it could be a lot of decisions that need to be made. It could be that they're just kind of trusting you. So I want you to kind of touch on that a little bit too, because
Yeah.
that whole architectural process, I think you can kind of cater the tolerance, let's say, like how involved does somebody want to be, and some people are involved in
Absolutely.
every decision, and
We definitely tailor our approach. So just to take a step back, the designing the home up front, like when I say designing architectural, the landscaping, the interior selections before we even break ground or very early in the process has three benefits. One is obviously the construction that we talked about.
yeah,
Two is the budgetary, right? Now before I even break ground, I know every component going into this home, every fixture, every wallpaper, every plug, you name it. And we know a true fixed price. So we know your budget before you break ground. It's not like 6 months in and you're like, oh my gosh, I'm $2 million over budget. What am I going to do?
yeah,
And third, you mentioned, yes, are there a lot of decisions front loaded? Absolutely. But during construction, you can really, you've made all those decisions. That anxiety of, oh, I got to do this, I got to do that, I got to pick this, pick that is gone.
yes,
You know the cost, you know what it's going to look like. We design everything in 3D, photorealistic, so you know exactly what this home is going to look like.
yeah,
We do it in virtual reality for some clients. So it really takes that stress of during the construction process away.
yeah,
So I wanted to touch on that. And then to go back to your question, we have our Sapphire way of how we like to do things, but every client's different, right?
yeah,
Some clients I've had a couple of clients that have literally quit their job to build their dream home. This has been an aspiration for them. They love it and they enjoy it and they want it to be super involved. Not my favorite scenario, if I'm being honest. Sometimes when clients get too intricate with details, it tends to burden the process.
sure,
We are the experts. We've done this dozens and dozens of times. So we know the best path forward. And we've had, on the flip side, I've literally had clients that I had never met in person until we delivered them the keys. They were either I've had some in Seattle, I've had some in Carolina, where we did everything virtual. And they were out of state and they were moving to Michigan, but they couldn't physically come here.
yeah,
I had one that I didn't meet till literally the day I gave him the keys, and one other client that we met one time kind of halfway through the project and then at the end. So, and then I've had clients that have literally told me, I'm super busy. I run all these businesses, whatever it may be. I can't meet 10, 15 times or whatever many times that you need me.
yeah,
How do we shorten this process? It's like, I love your houses. I love what you do. I'm very happy. This is my thought and my style. And we got it done in 3 meetings.
yeah,
He came to our office 3 times. We presented everything. We gave him some options. And he was I want A, I want B, or I want some of the A and some of B. And we combined it. And he was happy with that route, right?
yeah,
Those are, I would say, the extremes. In general, typically, we have 2 phases of design. There's the architectural side of things, and they're happening somewhat simultaneously, or there's overlap at least.
yeah,
But the architectural side, where we're designing the facade of the home, the exterior, what it's going to look like, and then the floor plan, obviously, the finished basement, as well as how the home is going to sit on the property, driveway and the landscape layout, if they want a pool,
yeah,
all those things. And then the infrastructure component of the home, which is what we call infrastructure, which is things like the water heaters and the electrical system and the insulation package and those types of things that we design up front. That's kind of that first phase. And then the second phase is the interior design selection. So this is where we're picking out cabinets and countertops and flooring, paint colors, whatever it may be, all the fun stuff, if you will, where the clients enjoy. And typically that process is anywhere from 10 to 20 meetings.
Yeah.
Most often right around 15 is kind of what we found is the sweet spot. Each meeting 2 to 3, maybe 4 hours. So there's definitely a commitment here. There's a time
For sure.
commitment.
Yeah.
You know, can we get it down to 10 if that's and within our typical Sapphire process? Yeah, we could, and we can make that happen without an issue. If you want, some clients need more time or they want more options or whatever it may be, and sometimes it stretches to that 20
Yeah.
meetings. But overall, the cadence is once every 1 to 2 weeks. We're meeting for 2 to 3 hours for 15 meetings. So it ends up being about a 6-month design process overall. That those two phases are overlapping. The permitting process is overlapping as well. So we're at some point when we're far enough along, we can create a permit set of plans, submit those to the municipality, and start that process. So overall, it's a 6-month design and permitting process before we actually break ground and get into construction.
Perfect. I want to dive a little bit deeper on design because, like I said, by bringing architects and building in house, it's a little bit of a unique situation. So, do you typically kind of just take inspiration from a client? Do you kind of have your own inspiration and say, hey, based on an intake or what you need, we think this would be great for you? Where do you get your designs and your inspiration? Where does that come from?
It's all over the board. There isn't a one size fits all answer to that. So we build our own homes under Sapphire. We do a couple a year where there isn't a buyer attached to it. So it's either a spec home or a model home. And that's really where we get a chance to be super creative, do things that some clients might not be as comfortable with, or something new and unique where we can kind of trial it out, if you will.
Yeah.
On those particular projects, I gain a lot of inspiration from everywhere, whether it's older homes that are 100 years old and that have stood the test of time, or like the newest and coolest, latest and greatest trends or homes or designs that I see on Instagram. A lot of what I follow on Instagram, if you look at my For You, if you will, is a lot of home stuff, design, architectural related items. So we pull a lot of designs from that. What's going on. A lot of design originates on the West Coast for whatever reason, California, and then kind of makes its way here, or Europe. A lot of really cool stuff is happening there. Lately, a lot of really cool stuff's happening in Florida. Every year, almost every year, we try to go to the Builder Show, where we, are keeping up with the latest and greatest, newest products that are out there, whether it's, fixtures, plumbing and lighting, or construction methods, or whatever it may be. And then usually every year I go to the what do they call it, the New American Home. So it's a luxury home tour where they're building $10 million plus homes. So this year's was in Orlando. It was a $14 million home. Last year's was in Vegas. It was a $13 million home, or maybe more. So you get to tour these homes and see some of the cool stuff that they've done and how they designed. And obviously different parts of the country have different design requirements, whether it's weather related, or if you're in the desert,
Right.
that home is going to look differently. And believe it or not, when I do travel, even with my family, oftentimes if I see a luxury community, I'm going to go tour some homes. I've done that numerous times. We actually did that.
We did that.
We started that in Arizona, Scottsdale.
See what's going on.
7-8 years ago, whatever it was. We toured a few
Yeah.
luxury model homes that they had. I've done that. Funny story. I was in Florida at Marco Island with the wife. This was maybe 6 years ago, and our flight home got canceled. And my wife wasn't happy. We had a newborn son, and she's kind of freaking out. And we couldn't find a flight home from anywhere in Florida. I checked Sarasota and Fort Myers and Jacksonville and Orlando and Miami, Fort Lauderdale, Tampa, you name it. I checked every airport. There was nothing. There was a winter storm, or a weather storm coming through. Weather storm, I don't know, whatever you want to say.
Yeah.
And it came through, so they canceled all the flights. So we ended up having to stay an extra night. And on the way from Fort Myers Airport to Marco Island, there's a huge billboard that says, America's #1 luxury community is Miramar Lakes. And that was very intriguing to me. So we passed by it. This is the first time I had seen it. So we get to Marco Island. I'm Googling this thing. I'm checking it out. I'm like, wow, these are super special homes. So I don't know, call it fate maybe. That flight got canceled. We had to stay an extra day. And this was like I don't know, 15 minutes from the airport. So I told the wife, I was like, I'd love to do this. Can we go and check out this?
Get out, yeah.
So we went and we toured a bunch of homes. They have a lake, and the salesperson took us on this pontoon and took us around the lake and showing us all these homes. It was a really, really cool experience. So
That's sweet.
gained a lot of insight and inspiration from that. So that's a long-winded answer to your question, but
Yeah.
we get inspiration from everywhere. And then clients do bring us oftentimes inspiration of things that they see. Oftentimes they're $30 million, $40 million homes in California or Florida, and their budget's not that high per se. But, we take those and implement some of those design elements into something that works with our architectural style or
Yeah.
within our climate and within the budget.
Yeah. I wanna kind of end things on, I think maybe, I don't know if this is a challenge but it's something maybe unique to you. Because you're the architect, so you're going to these shows, keeping up with the latest trends. You're also growing a company,
Yeah.
and you're running that. So how do you manage that? What do you love the most? Like, do you feel like you're getting pulled, or just, yeah, tell me a little bit about that perspective.
Great question. Something I think about almost on daily basis, right? So when I first started Sapphire, I had read a book. It's either my number 1 or number 2 business book, but it was called E-Myth. And then they had Contractor's Edition. This is a very early in my career. And one of the things that stood out to me was if you want to create a company, right, and not just be a builder of houses, but create a real company, a thriving company, you can't do everything yourself, right? You can't be the architect and the guy that does the permits and the guy that does the selections and the guy that does the sales and the guy that manages construction and warranty and client relations and everything, accounting and everything else. So there was a phrase that was, you have to work on the business, not just in the business, right? We may have heard that. That's something that has always resonated with me, and I've continuously tried to unload things off of my plate that either I'm not the best at, there are better people that are better suited for this, or I don't like.
Yeah.
Right. So one of the first of those things was the accounting.
Sure.
I love math, but I hate accounting. Like, I'm not data entry and
Yeah.
putting in receipts and invoices and checking against the contract and stuff. That's not for me. So, having the right people in the right place and then creating the systems that go around that. As you grow, these systems become more and more important. You have to fall back on your systems, because if I'm not there for whatever reason, I mean, touring a home in Florida, for example, the business still has to run. So, bringing in the right people, doing the right jobs, and figuring out what's most valuable from your time, right? So where's my time most valuably spent?
Yeah.
What am I best at? And what do I love the most? Right? There's I forget the name of the rule or whatever, but it's like the 4 quadrants.
Yeah.
You're great at it and you love to do it. You're great at it and you don't like to do it. You like to do it, but you're not good at it.
Yeah.
And you don't like to do it and you're not good at it.
Yeah.
That's the things that anything that falls in that
offload that
quadrant, you got to
first.
get rid of those.
Yeah.
You suck at it and you don't like doing it anyway. Accounting, gone. Yeah. So, and then slowly moving your way so that you're only working in that box where you're great at it and you love doing it.
Yeah.
I'm still not there, right? I'm still continuously building and improving and working on it. You can't just go and hire 20 people right out day one, right? So for me, I love the client relation part. I love building that rapport with the client and their relationship with them. And so that's a big part of what I do and where I spend my time. Although I don't like accounting per se, the financials of the business are still very important. So reviewing those on a month-to-month basis, I actually do like doing that, making sure that we're budgeting properly, we're staying on track. Where is our, what kind of cash flow do we have coming in? What are we expecting to go out?
Yeah.
What do we have available to invest, whether that's in a piece of property or build another spec or a model home. Those are the types of, kind of big picture decisions that I love to make, and I'm very strategic in that way. And then I still love the architectural side of
Yeah.
things. And I'm still very much involved in that, especially what I call my passion projects, which are those model homes every year. Essentially, we're building a new model home. The last one was the Cameron.
Yeah.
We're doing the Kylie, which will be going live in next spring, which I'm really excited about, in the
exciting.
Pinnacle neighborhood in Oakland
Yeah.
Township. And then we're already working on our 2028 one, and we're starting to think about our 2029 model home. So we're going to start doing this where it's a yearly
Yeah.
showcase of some of our best work. And those are the projects that really get me excited because I can be super creative.
Yeah.
These are some of the higher end homes from a price point perspective, so I can kind of think outside the box and do some cool and unique things and showcase our talents from both design and construction, what
Right.
we can do. So I do love spending time on those. When I'm the rare occasions that I'm bored, when I don't have anything going on, which doesn't happen very often, but I do find myself thinking about designing homes.
Yeah.
It's weird maybe, but it is something that I love. And going back to the last episode, I'll say, I was ready to throw in the towel at that home, but deep down, I knew then and I know now, this is what I love to do. This is what I was put on this earth for. Creating beautiful homes from ground up, helping people achieve their dreams, build their dreams, if you will,
Yeah.
change their lives.
Absolutely. And fun fact, why don't you tell us a little bit on that note about your last name and what it means? Call that fate.
Yeah. So Najjar is actually Arabic for carpenter. I come from a long lineage of carpenters. Actually, I was talking to my grandma a year or two ago, and so I mentioned in the last episode, my uncle was in construction. He was a carpenter, cabinet maker, handyman.
Yeah.
His dad, my grandfather was, and his dad and his dad. I think we traced it back like as far as my grandma could remember, which was like the mid 1800s. I'm like, and my dad isn't, but my uncle was, and I kind of took
Yeah.
that lineage, same last name, right? So I'm like 8th generation at least. So we're going close to 200 years of people in some sort of construction, right?
Yeah.
Carpentry. So there is a long history and lineage of that in my family. And so yeah, maybe that was fate.
Continuing the legacy. Sweet. That's another episode in the books. So subscribe to this podcast, guys, if you want a deeper perspective on Sapphire and building and your experiences. And we'll see you in the next episode.